Good morning, everyone. Happy Mondays and welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by my fellow Mirror columnist, Eva Simpson. Morning, Eva.
Morning.
So we're going to go through the big stories of the day, and throughout it all, we want you to get involved. This is the People's Paper Review, so we want you to ask us your questions. Dig into the comments below, ask us whatever is on your mind, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. So what have we got in the papers today? Well, there's some stuff in the Mirror that should absolutely enrage you. It's been revealed that despite paying just 6.3 million in corporation tax last year, Amazon has won 80-odd government contracts worth 225 million. Not much to say about that, but oh my God, guys. It's also revealed that long COVID patients don't get disability benefits because it's not recognised as a disability. That's due a U-turn, surely. And oh yeah, the government's decided to put VAT on face masks just as we hit a second wave. Ka-ching, at least if you've just won a PPE contract off your Tory mates. But first, there's some good news. It's Pride of Britain week. Now, next Sunday, on ITV, you're going to be seeing basically the people's heroes, people who've been chosen by the public for some special recognition. And this year, the organisers were absolutely flooded with nominations for Marcus Rashford following his free school meals crusade during the summer holidays. Now, normally, Eva, I read the paper and I end up infuriated at the state of the world. But today it's filled with the sort of stuff that makes you kind of glad it's got at least some humans in it who do amazing things. Are you hot-warmed by what Rashford's done, or are you infuriated that he's had to even do it?
Oh, I mean, in my column, I've written about Marcus Rashford for a few months now. I think what he's done is absolutely amazing. You know, he's a young black guy. He's only 22, 23 years old, and he's actually done more than all the politicians put together for vulnerable children across the country. So I think he's an absolute hero, and he deserves all the honours, all the medals, everything going. I think is fantastic. You're right. It shouldn't have to fall to him. He has a pretty busy day job as well. So, but the fact that he's found time to do this, it's fantastic. And I'm really heartened to see what else he goes on to do afterwards.
Yeah, I've got to say, after it's one of those horrible things to say, you know, as a mum, hate that. But having become a parent, having been pregnant and then having become a parent, I had it sort of shown to me more clearly than anything else how important food is to a child's development. What you put into firstly your body when you're pregnant, and then into their bodies once they start eating and growing and everything else, makes such a huge difference to how they can get through life, how they can educate, how they can grow, how their brains develop. And I think, I mean, there's talk in the Mirror Politics newsletter today that there's perhaps a U-turn pending over this. And the only question for the government is whether Boris Johnson takes the blame or Rishi Sunak. Who do you think is at fault?
For me, I don't even think it's about the blame game. I think, you know, so much of politics is we get wrapped up in the minutiae and the nitty gritty. That doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. What matters is that it needs to get sorted out. You know, a neighbour of mine works in a local secondary school, and I saw her during lockdown, and she said to me, sometimes the children come in crying because they haven't had breakfast, and literally the food that they get at school at lunchtime is probably the only meal that they're going to get. So it's all well and good the government saying, well, we've given councils money and they can spend it. The fact is the food needs, as you said, to get to the kids. And this is a sort of quick way that Marcus Rashford has come up with. Just give the kids the food. You know, we live in Britain, the sixth most richest country in the world, as we keep getting told. Why are children in Britain starving today? And why does it take a young 22-year-old to sort it out? So, you know, I think forget the blame game. I think just, you know, forget saving face, just get on. There's a problem here. Children are going to be going hungry. Let's sort it out. I think that's how I think about it.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering as well, this is one meal a day we're talking about, not all three, just one. It's not replacing the parents' responsibility to feed their child. It's just one meal. You're still hungry after this one meal if you haven't got any other food. Now,
exactly. You know, as you're sorry to cut in, but just let's go deeper than that, because we know that the meals is just a problem. There is a big issue here, and it's great that it's been highlighted. But why does it only get highlighted when it's the holidays? There are other issues going on, so
exactly.
there's a lot sorted.
As what Joanne's asking is the free school meals a political or a social issue? It's both, Joanne. You know, there's millions of parents who've been furloughed on 67% of their wages. Now, the rent isn't 67%, and the fuel bills aren't 67%, and the council tax isn't at 67%. They're paying 100% of everything. And people who are furloughed are more likely to be on minimum wage or even risk of redundancy than other people. So what Marcus is doing, and what Labour is suggesting, what the Tories are arguing about, is paying during a crisis to help people who are suffering the most, which is, you know, the point of the welfare state. Now, some of the Tories are saying, well, Labour never did this sort of thing. Labour didn't have a pandemic, guys. That's one thing.
And I keep saying we've got to stop blaming. You know, it's just like they come in, oh, Labour didn't do this, so and so said. That doesn't matter at this point. Let's just move on. And you know, we see how much is spent on track and trace. This is not even a fraction. Paying, you know, getting free lunches for kids in the holidays is not even a fraction of what we're spending on a track and trace system that isn't even working properly, we keep being told. So where are the priorities? This is a political decision that's been made not to do this. And I think it's just embarrassing for us as a country. You know, I have family who live in the States. I have family who live in Ghana, and I get messages over the weekend saying, oh, what's going on in England? I hear that you guys are refusing to feed hungry kids. I mean, this is the image of Britain that's going around the world. And at a time when we've got Brexit looming and we want to make friends and influence people, what kind of PR message is this saying about us as a country?
Exactly. As Michael asks, how can the MPs have their meals subsidised in the House of Parliament while children are refused? The answer to that, Michael, is because it's the MPs.
Yeah, by our money. It's our taxpayers' money that is subsidising their food. God, if they had anything about them, they would just give all that money away. I mean, it's just really...
Yeah. And the answer to your question, Michael, is that it's MPs that vote for both these things. So of course they're subsidising their own food. Of course they're not subsidising hungry children having their food. That's how it works. Now, we've also had a couple of Tories. It's worth mentioning this before we move on to the next story. Please ask us more of your questions. Get into comments to ask us whatever's on your mind. Now, Robert Harfan, Conservative MP, who has said that we think that the government's misjudged the mood of the country on this. Tim Loughton says we think this is politically wrong to have voted against the cut to schools foods. Andrew Mitchell said, Tobias Elwood said that he wouldn't vote for it again. He voted for it once, but not twice. Those are the good Tories, Eva. Those are the nice guys, the soft Tories, the ones who try to sort of, are more sane than the others, most of perhaps from Tim Lamb. And that they still don't seem to aren't able to say the word that it's just bad to have hungry kids. And that's it, surely.
Well, I think
it's judging.
They're just caught up in the politics of it all. And I think they're too caught up in the point scoring and, getting one over on the other. I saw Nikki Morgan last week. I watched her on Question Time, and she was asked this question, and she said, "Oh, but you called us, so-and-so called us, a mean word in the chamber." And it was like, is this what it has come to, this point scoring? And I think, the public, they have misjudged the mood of the public, because the public are tired of this point scoring and all this kind of mudslinging that's always being thrown about. Didn't the Queen tell us in a speech that we should all just be kinder and nicer and listen to each other? And none of that's happening. Where is that kindness? Britain prides itself on being a kind country and a good country. And I think the response to Marcus Rashford shows us the true Britain, shows us the reality. People want to help, and people are helping in their droves. And I think that is just more heartwarming than anything that could go on in the House of Commons, that actually people across Britain are just getting on with it and saying, actually, if the government won't do it, then we'll do it ourselves. So that's really lovely to see.
It's a nice thing to see, especially Marcus Rashford's Twitter feed there. I guarantee people, if you go and spend 5 minutes just scrolling through what this young man's done and what other people are doing and helping, even on my village's local Facebook group, I've seen mums on there going, if you've got any problems, just DM me and I'll sort out some meals during the week, things like that. It's inspiring. It's helping lots of other people do things like that. But we shouldn't have to. And to some extent, I worry that if we keep if we do this as a nation, as Rashfordians, whatever you want to call ourselves, that then the government can say, well, we don't need to. We don't need to anymore because you guys can handle it. It's the big society at work, and it just lets the state off.
I think I agree. I agree. It is worrying, but I think ultimately, they've sort of seemed to have washed their hands of it. They're saying we've already given the money to the councils. The councils are saying we've spent the money, so it's just a ding dong. And ultimately, we don't want children to go hungry. So if it falls to us, the public, to do something about it, then so be it. However it gets done, and then ultimately, even though the next election is a few years away, we still get to make our decision at the ballot box. And then,
Yeah, I think the Tories lost the next election some time ago, to be honest.
We have poor memories. Who knows? Fast forward, 3 or 4 years, who knows where we'll be.
Exactly. And bear in mind, these children whose brains aren't going to be fed properly and nourished properly and growing properly are the ones who are going to be having to work to earn the taxes to pay off all the stuff that these Tory government has managed to cock up on the pandemic. But let's move on. Something even more heartwarming than Marcus Rashford. There is a young girl who's also won a Pride of Britain award, a Child of Courage award. She's got Emmy Lorraine Nicholas. She's 11 years old. 3 years ago, when she was 8, she was diagnosed with leukemia, and she spent 100 days and nights, I think it was, in Manchester Children's Hospital, having chemo, watching other children around her lose their hair when she should have been going to school. And she looked at what was going on in the ward around her and said to her parents, no one's feeding the parents. No one's looking after the mummies and daddies. Everyone's looking after the children and no one's looking after them. So when she came out and, while she was still in there, she encouraged her grandmother, who works for some food providers, to start making meals and bring them in for the other parents. And now she's 11 years old. She rang the bell so she was finished her treatment in December, and now she's running a registered charity which even during lockdown made 440 Friday night takeaways, 700 snack bags and toiletry baskets. She's taking donations, she's using volunteers, and she's helping all the other parents at Manchester Children's Hospital. It's just, I read this, Eva, and I know I'm a hardened hack, but I was absolutely in tears by the end of it. I was in floods.
Oh, well, that is Pride of Britain for you, and which is so why it is such a brilliant awards show. And I'm so glad that it will be on TV next month on the 1st of November, I believe.
On Sunday, I think.
But I think, stories like this are incredible, especially the young and the children who do so much, often in really tough circumstances themselves. As you say, she was being treated for leukemia, but she started thinking of others and caring for others and practically doing something to help other people. So she's so deserving of this award. So it's fantastic. And I'm sure her whole family and all her neighbours and her friends must be hugely proud of her, as is everyone at the Mirror. I think it's fantastic. So
yeah, well, and please get your comments in about Emmy. Get into the comments. Tell us what you think. Ask us some questions, anything at all that's on your mind, and we'll do our best to answer them. Hasn't even got to be about the stories that we're talking about today. Whatever else happens to be bothering you. But I think, Eva, just reading that, it's when you see a human being who can look at the state of the world and think, how can I improve this for someone else? That's amazing. To have it in an 8-year-old is.
I know. I think what children can be, as a mom, I know they can be incredibly selfish, but they can also be incredibly kind. It's only when they get older and go through the world they get a bit more cynical and a bit toughened. But I think that these are things we should be cherishing in our young people and encouraging, because they are doing some amazing things. But sadly, we don't really recognise them and they don't get the recognition. So I think this is why Pride of Britain and recognising these achievements are so important. So good on her. And I hope we hear more stories. And I'm sure she will go on to inspire so many other children. I've been in the room when they've been judging Pride of Britain, and God, the winners are amazing. But some of the people who sort of are nominated are just as fantastic. There's just so many amazing young people out there.
Yeah, really, the process of what they have to go through, and the people who end up on the, in the rejected pile, not because they've done anything wrong, but because there's someone even more amazing than them, and even more amazing.
Wish you could give them all Pride of Britain awards. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they're brilliant stuff. So tune in on Sunday, everybody, and take your tissues with you, because you will be blubbing like a baby. So keep on asking us your questions. We're going to get to them at the end. Now, finally, our photograph / story of the day is about a little girl called Eva Monument. Now, she's only 3 years old, but she is going to walk, get this, 31 miles, a mile a day for the whole of October to raise money. So her twin Tommy, that's the two of them there having a cuddle. He's got cerebral palsy in all 4 limbs. He's in a wheelchair. He's got a lot of pain in his legs, and there's a special surgery that he could get if his CP wasn't quite so severe. But because it is, he doesn't qualify under the NHS. But they're trying to raise some money so that he can have that surgery, which hopefully will mean that he can walk again alongside his twin. Oh, I don't know what to say, Eva, except
just another amazing little girl. I mean, you said she's only another Eva, so I give her extra props for her name, but no, it's brilliant. I mean, she's only 3 years old, and the fact that she's going to walk a mile. I mean, I cycled to school with my son, who's 5, every day, and it's about 1.5 miles. And about halfway through, he's on a bike, he's already having a tantrum and a meltdown. So the fact that she's going to walk a mile, and there's a 3-year-old little girl, and to raise money for her brother, again, I think it just goes back to what we were saying a moment ago, that this idea that people are maybe just not waiting for the government, for the NHS, for other people to step in. They're just actually going to, get on with it. Maybe we're all inspired by Captain Tom to just say, do you know what? We can all do something, even if it is just walking up and down your garden or walking a mile. We can all do something to help other people. So it's just really lovely. So well done to Eva. I hope the link is in the mirror that we can all donate to her fundraising efforts.
Exactly. I think it's one of those, if you go and get the Mirror today, guys, it's just full of stuff that makes you stop and take stock and think, well, all right, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're being run by morons. There are people dying. We're all at threat of lockdown. 5 tiers has gone, and now we're in 3 tiers because the bottom 2 tiers, of there not being too much risk, have just been lopped off. We're all facing Christmas on our own and stuff, but there's some amazing stuff going on. Paula Perotta says, don't have children if you can't afford to clothe and feed them. Now, that's a common view, especially in the Tory party at the moment. One thing I'd say about that, Paula, is the point that we made earlier on. You can afford to feed and clothe your children, and then you lose your job. Or then you go on 67% of your wages. What do you do then? Do you only have 67% of your kid to feed? Have a heart, Paula.
It's a bit harsh, Paula. I mean, as Susie, you've said, that is a common thing that people have said, but a criticism. But ultimately, it's the child that suffers. The child should not suffer because of the parent. Ultimately, the child didn't ask to be born. The child didn't ask to be here, and just because of the circumstances of their birth, the child should not suffer because of the parent. And that's fundamentally. We can't live in a country where we say, well, if you can't afford to feed them, tough, they should starve. That we can't. Are we there now? Is that where we are, really?
I think it's where we were in about the 14th century, but we moved on a bit after the Peasants' Revolt. Shannon Jones, actually, most kids going hungry are now kids with working parents whose income has been dropped significantly. Thank you, Shannon. Yes. So I can see there's obviously some arguments going on in the comments below. That's fine. It's arguing with each other that helps us form our own opinions and justify our opinions. So it's a good, healthy thing to do. But yeah, it's, if you're on minimum wage, it's about £8 odd an hour. 67% of that will be 6 odd quid an hour. How many hours do you have to work to have the same amount of money as Boris Johnson considered chicken feed, which is £250,000 a year? Ask yourselves that. Louise, hello. Whatever you think of the parents, no child should go hungry in one of the richest countries in the world. That's your point, isn't it, Eva, you made earlier on? It's just it's
one of the richest countries in the world, and children are still going hungry. And we've got to recognise that is a bad thing, and we've got to try and stop it and do something about it. And it's not such a hard fix. If a Premiership footballer can, be so enlightened to say, come on, guys, can we do something about this? And it gets done. Why can't all these great minds who run the country, who've had the best education, who've all been to Oxford and Cambridge, why can't they sort this all out? I just don't get it.
Well, because they were busy, I don't know, goosing the ladies or whatever it is they do at Oxford and Cambridge. Marion Mash, is this an advert for going out and buying the Mirror?
Yes, it is,
Yeah.
Marion. Go and get your copy.
If we haven't shown you some good reasons to buy the Mirror today, then I mean, for goodness sake, any newspaper,
wouldn't you buy it?
any newspaper. And listen, there are loads of people who've had their income reduced in the course of a pandemic. I've had mine reduced. I'm freelance, I'm self-employed, I'm a single parent. Do you know what? I've still got my house. I'm still paying the mortgage, just about. And I'm fortunate enough to have a bit of land, so I grow my own veg. And last year I invested in a big chest freezer. So when I've got my veg, I stick it in the freezer and we can eat it all winter long. Lots of people.
Susie, who knew?
Exactly, right? It's the good life down here. But lots of people don't have that. They live in flats. They are furloughed through no choice of their own. And someone's got to stand up for them. And if it's the Mirror, then great, because I haven't seen that kind of stuff in the Telegraph or the Mail or the Times or on the BBC particularly often, despite the fact that's called a rabid bed of lefties. Someone's got to be a voice for these people. And to be frankly, would any of us have heard about Emmy, Narain Nicholas, or Eva Monument if that wasn't in the paper today? I didn't hear about them before. Did you, Eva?
I hadn't. So as you said, I think, yes, it is a good advert for buying the paper, because there's so much doom and gloom and so much misery out there. So if we want some good news, then yes, pick up the Mirror.
Yes, it makes a nice change to have some good news that actually that actually makes you feel that the world is going to be okay. And the best way, I should add, of getting rid of the issue of hungry children and people who can't afford to feed their kids and people who are minimum wage and all the debts we're building up as a result of the pandemic, the best way of resolving all that is to feed the current generation of children properly so they can be well educated and get good jobs that earn good money in the future, 50 years down the road. So don't quibble, people. Right. Thank you for joining us, Eva. It's been nice to have you here. Thank you for arguing, everybody, in the comments. Come back on Wednesday and we'll be doing it all over again, probably with a U-turn about free school meals, I expect. Thanks for popping in. Bye.